Welcome. My name is Raj Mehta. I'm a therapist at Serenity Therapy Center. I'm also a recovering heroin addict. I came out of the streets of Detroit and crawled across broken glass to graduate from U of M with a 4.0. I consider myself an addiction killer. I'm licensed to kill addiction on site, and so I want to help people and alleviate suffering and basically help families heal from this disease of addiction. We're going to talk about the disease model, and thank you for being here. Has anybody ever heard about addiction being referred to as a disease? Okay, this disease idea, some people are very ignorant and they're going to say it's not a disease. I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of destroy that myth in about 2 minutes. For anything to be a disease, right, it must meet 2 criteria. It must have symptoms and it must be treatable. And so according to the AMA, for it to be a disease, it's got to have some symptoms to it that we can identify and still be treatable. Think about the concept of diabetes. Diabetes is a disease and the symptoms are high blood sugar and is treatable with insulin. So think about the disease of addiction or the disease of a flu. They are a little bit different, but the model still works. Imagine if a person had the flu and they came to you and they said, I can't work today. I have a really bad flu. I can't work. What are some physical symptoms that you would look for to see if that person was telling you the truth or lying? Anybody have an idea? Yep. So we got sneezing, watery eyes, congestion. We have these symptoms that are physical, that are self-evident. This person has the flu and they can't work today. So think about addiction from the same lens. Imagine a person comes to you and says, I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict and I can't work today. And so when I look about this, imagine a person that's homeless. Think about addiction in terms of stages. A person with stage 1 cancer comes to you and they say, I have stage 1 cancer. You're like, well, you look really healthy to me. You don't seem like you're very ill. A person walks up to you and says, I have stage 4 cancer. You're like, oh my God, you don't look so good. It looks like you're actually going to be dying. And so stage 1 versus stage 4, that's why I bring up the homeless person. Because the homeless person is your stereotype of a stage 4 alcoholic or addict. And so when you look at that person, physically, what's different about him than the average Joe?
Disheveled.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about that physical appearance of a homeless person that's been abusing drugs and alcohol for years and they're in stage 4?
Dirty.
Yeah. And so basically we have these physical symptoms. They don't look so good, they don't smell so good, and they don't dress so good. And that's pretty obvious. And so when you see that person, you can say there's something really going on here. So imagine in terms of the flu. The flu has those physical symptoms as well, but addiction is more complicated. So imagine that same person mentally. What's different about the homeless person that doesn't have a job, can't work, and abuses drugs and alcohol mentally? What's going on in their mind? What's different about them?
Depressed.
Yeah, they're depressed, they're anxious. Imagine this, I got a pocket full of heroin. What am I thinking about? Where do I get more heroin? I got a 5th in my hand and I'm an alcoholic on Skid Row. And what am I thinking about? Where do I get another 5th? And so there's an obsession with the drug. There's an obsession with the alcohol. Is that making sense? And so imagine if I'm obsessed with something all day long. It's always on my mind. I'm always ruminating. What's going to happen? Anxiety, right? And anxiety and stress over a period of time morph into depression. So I got high rates of anxiety. I have high depression. I have an obsession with the drug. Let's go even further and speculate about that person that's homeless, okay? You see that person there? To become homeless in America, we got to assume a couple things. You must have burnt a lot of bridges. A lot of people in your family, your friends, your coworkers, they said, we're done with you. No more. We tried helping you out and we're absolutely done. Imagine if I kept making promises to you. Promises such as, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop using heroin. And the worst part is that in that moment, I meant that promise to my very heart. I was absolutely sincere. And every time I promised you, I broke that promise. How would that affect my self-esteem and my self-confidence? Anybody have an idea? Yeah, so I got low self-esteem, I have low self-confidence, I have high anxiety, I have high depression, I have an obsession with the drug. What do you think I'm going to do all day long? More of this. Is that making sense? Yeah. Let's talk about the social symptoms of addiction. Those are different than the mental ones, right? Imagine if a person has been abusing drugs and alcohol. What happens to their relationships with friends and family?
Breakdown.
Yeah, they begin to break down. And so we have parents that come to my office crying with tears in their eyes. They say, my kid smokes too much pot. right? And so other people come into my office, right, and they talk about, you know, my friends are leaving me, they're upset with me. Well, why is that? Well, I do heroin. And so we meet people that actually are on a football team. And the football team says, hey Raj, you're smoking way too much pot. You gotta stop smoking weed or you're off the team. Now I'm in a dilemma. I can stop smoking marijuana and stay on the team, or I can find a brand new set of friends that say, hey Raj, you smoke just the right amount of pot. Is that making sense? So we have the social symptoms of addiction. I'll give you some more examples about that. Guy comes into my office at Brighton Hospital. I'm doing an intake. He's a hotshot attorney. He's wearing an Armani suit. You know, he's one of the intelligent people in our community, but he's an alcoholic. Look at the corner of my eye and I can see out in the hallway his wife is kind of looking sad and despondent. She's sitting in the chair. So I welcome him into my office. I say, welcome, sir. You got the best insurance, Blue Cross and Blue Shield. It's going to pay for a 21-day inpatient stay. We're going to give you a wonderful, safe medical detox. We're going to give you therapy, individual counseling, nutritious food, and even some recreation, right? The guy looks at me and goes, I shouldn't be here. Now, I'm a very open-minded guy, right? The odds of you meeting me, though, inpatient on accident are really, really low. And so I go, okay, well, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I go, okay. He goes, this is a big mistake. So I think to myself, I got to find out what's really going on with this guy. So I invite the wife in. I say, do I have your permission to bring your wife in for a second? He's like, yeah, sure, bring her on in. So I got the wife sitting over here. I got the husband sitting over there. Guess what question I asked the wife to determine whether or not her husband is an alcoholic? How about this? Please describe your husband's drinking. That's not even a loaded question. I could have said, is this guy an alcoholic, right? But that's too simple. I said, please describe your husband's drinking. And she breaks down into tears. Her bottom lip begins to quiver and she can't even say a word. So I get the guy, I say, welcome to Brighton Hospital, sir. You're an alcoholic. He goes, how dare you? I go, you gotta be kidding, right? I can ask 100 women that question, only one's gonna cry. And the one that's crying has the alcoholic husband. Is that making sense? We tie this also back into the social and the stages of addiction, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Let's go back to another attorney. Every 6 months I get these attorneys to come in my office, and they're in my office for domestic violence. They have no other previous arrests, no DUIs, nothing going on, and magically at 44 years of age, they get their first domestic violence. So as I'm doing the intake on the guy and I'm talking to him, I said, well, tell me about your girlfriend. Oh, she's 22. Oh, okay. I go, does your girlfriend abuse drugs or alcohol? No, not at all. Okay. But you got into a really big fight. Can you tell me about the fight? Yeah, well, she was snorting her Adderall and taking her Xanax, and she had 2 beers that day, and she got really angry at me saying I was cheating on her, and she went to my phone and we got into a fight. I go, but where does it say that she should be snorting her Adderall? Oh, I don't know. Why is she taking Xanax and drinking? Oh, I don't know. I think that your girlfriend has a prescription drug problem. And the guy says to me, Raj, that's not possible. I go, well, why not? He goes, look how cute she is. And I go, yeah, but understand, she's only in stage 1. Just be patient when she gets to stage 4. Is that making sense? So addiction, just like cancer, has stages. Let's talk about legal consequences or legal symptoms of addiction. What are some of the symptoms that we see with alcoholics and addicts? What types of charges do they get? Absolutely. DUI is a classic one. We mentioned domestic violence, right? Possession charges, drunken disorderly, right? And so there's certain kinds of crimes you can kind of associate with addiction. So if a guy's got 1 DUI, it's about 50-50. Guy's got 2 DUIs, a 75% chance he's an alcoholic. Guy's got 3 DUIs, odds are very high he's an alcoholic. Okay, what are some legal symptoms of addiction? What's different about alcoholics and addicts? What types of crimes do they commit or are they famous for doing? DUIs are very common, right? And also we have MIPs if they're younger, domestic violence charges like we kind of mentioned. Also possession is very common too, paraphernalia charges. So imagine if a person has 1 DUI. What are the odds of that person being an alcoholic? 50%. What about 2 DUIs? 75%. What about 3 DUIs? 95% chance that person is an alcoholic. I meet a lot of people, and sometimes when I meet somebody, I don't want to give them a label. But when somebody comes into my office with 3 DUIs, I say, hey sir, I'm really afraid to tell you this, but the odds are really high that you're an alcoholic. And sometimes they say something like this to me, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just unlucky. And And I'm like, wow, like you mean like globally unlucky? Like every area of your life unlucky? You're going to leave my office and slip and fall and break your nose unlucky? Or do you mean the only kind of unlucky that occurs when you're drinking and driving? Look, a lot of people don't want to be alcoholics and addicts. They prefer to be unlucky. So we talk about these legal charges. There's certain kinds of arrests that kind of tell you this person has a problem with addiction. Now, what about symptoms of addiction with regards to finances? How does being an alcoholic or an addict over a period of time affect a person's finances?
Drains them.
Yeah. We got people that have no money, the people that declare bankruptcy, people that can't pay their taxes. And so if you tie it, we call it the high cost of low living. Some people that are so addicted, they'll actually prioritize their heroin over their cell phone bill. They'll prioritize their alcohol over their kids' food. And we see this happening all the time in families that they have no money at all, yet they're able to buy all their drugs and alcohol. It becomes their priority. It becomes their fixation. Now, what about spiritual symptoms of addiction? What are some of the symptoms that we find with regards to morals and values over a period of time? What happens to a person's belief in a higher power or their values? Yeah, so when a person begins maybe first trying alcohol or drugs, they might actually say to themselves, well, you know, I believe in a God, I believe in a higher power. But over a period of time, they begin to realize they can't stop using. They can begin to curse God. They can become very angry. Some become actually atheists. But other people actually begin to break their own morals and values down over a period of time. They'll begin to do things they said they would never do. So to give you an example of this, what's really frustrating to me, two female clients from West Bloomfield came to me, and I got a chance to meet them, and they had really kind of interesting stories. Both these young ladies only were smoking marijuana and drinking beer on weekends, right? They were not alcoholics, they were not addicts. Yet, they found boyfriends that had a lot of trouble going on. So these boyfriends wear their baseball caps backwards, they got the tattoos, right? They wear the wife beater t-shirts, right? And when these girls bring them home to their parents, the parents are like, we hate this guy. And she goes, oh my God, I'm gonna have babies with him. We're gonna live in West Bloomfield. Mom's like, no, you're not. You can't see him. Of course, that draws her more to him, right? And at some point during this relationship, these two young ladies catch their boyfriend shooting heroin. Now, what's a normal female response to be if you saw someone that you love and care about putting a needle in their arm? What would be the logical response for those two young ladies? What should they have said out loud? Fear. What the hell is going on? You have a problem. You have to go get help. I can't date you. I can't be with you if you're going to be using heroin, right? But they didn't say that. Guess what they said? I want to know what you feel. I want to share that experience with you. Now, here's a chance for a man to be a hero. Here's a chance for these guys to say, I love and care for you so much, I would never stick a needle in your arm. I wouldn't give this up to my worst enemy. And instead of those guys being heroes, what did they do? They said, let me shoot you up. And now we got Bonnie and Clyde running around stealing shit all day, and they basically are being really bad at stealing. And so these two guys get caught, right, stealing. They go to jail, they go to prison, and their girlfriends have a heroin habit. Their girlfriends are spending $100 a day on heroin. Now they have no money. And so, believe it or not, their young female friends say to them, hey, you're really cute. Hey, why don't you go on backpages.com and become a hooker and pay for your heroin habit? What could possibly go wrong with that plan? And you see my point. These young ladies, not being savvy to the streets, not being real deal criminals, they go off into that world, and then really, really bad things happen to them. Just use your imagination. Really, really bad things happen to them. Then it becomes my job to put them back together again. And that can take 1 or 2 years, and that never had to happen, and that really pisses me off. Is that making sense? The flu is very easy to treat. It only has physical symptoms. Addiction is very difficult to treat. It has physical, mental, social, financial, legal, even spiritual symptoms all going on simultaneously. But the main symptom of addiction is the inability to get high successfully. Think about it in terms of an allergy reaction. When a person has a peanut allergy, why allergies are very complicated because you don't always have a negative reaction when you eat a peanut, but sometimes it can be really bad. Addiction is very similar. Not every time does a person drink alcohol and get a DUI, but yet when they're always being arrested, alcohol is always involved. And so when a person has an allergy reaction, you can say, when you use this drug, when you drink alcohol, bad things tend to happen. And so when a person came to me and said, hey, I got a peanut butter allergy, I'm going to say, hey, let's avoid peanut butter. However, if you come to me and say I have an alcohol allergy, we're going to put a plan together to avoid alcohol. However, if every time I turn around, I see you, sticking your fingers in the peanut butter jar or grabbing a beer, we have a serious problem. Is that making sense?